what's the origin story of Jeff Starling?
Yeah, the origin story of Jeff Starling is I was born and raised in a rural community where we had faith, grit and determination was really instilled at you in you in an early age. And my father was the first in his family to go to college, and my parents really valued education. And so I was very fortunate. My public high school where I went to school had roughly a 50% dropout rate, but my parents really insisted that we get our education and sent us to college, their kids to college, and I did that, and then spent a little time in D.C. as a staffer for a United States senator who was chairman of the Armed Services Committee at the time. It's where I met my now wife. She was with Jim Inhofe at the
Oh,
time.
okay, okay.
And so one of my coworkers was her roommate way back in 1997. And
you say way back in 1997 like that.
it's getting time flies. It's getting close to 30
does.
years now, which is hard to believe, right?
Yeah, I just when you say the 90s were 30 years ago, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I know. I remember a party like it's 1999. That's been a long time ago.
Oh man, I'm telling you, and I've actually seen that performed in concert by Prince. So that's how old
before
I
it was
am.
1999.
Before it was 1999.
When you were wondering what would happen. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Exactly. So, what made you decide to run for Attorney General?
Yeah, so I have a legal practice that I had a national law practice as a litigation partner for a national law firm, and so my roots are really in law, and I went from that to in-house counsel here in Oklahoma City, and then helped run a private equity-backed business for a while. So I have a real rooting in private sector voices and private sector experience, both at a national law practice and as a senior leader at a business. So as I was looking at the races, I'm a firm believer that we need more private sector voices in elected office, especially statewide elected office. And then as a father of two daughters, we have two teenage daughters, I'm really concerned. I think Oklahoma is primed and really well positioned for the next decade or more, but we need the right people in the right spots. And those private sector voices lend a lot of experience and perspective to those positions. So as I was looking at running for this, I decided to step in and want to help preserve Oklahoma's way of life. We have a great thing going here. We need to make sure it continues, and I believe I have the experience to help add to that repertoire to make sure we continue on the right path.
Very good, very good. We're speaking with Jeff Starling. He's a Republican candidate for Attorney General and also Oklahoma's Secretary of Energy and Environment. Talking a little bit about his campaign. So you've never run for office before. This is a first-timer thing for you.
I've never run for office before, and in your last bit, I was so thankful. It had nothing to do with figuring out legislative salaries.
I'm telling you. That's one of those questions that I get all the time as a political correspondent is like, how come they always raise their salaries and we're over here? I'm like, they don't. They really don't. They don't.
I'm just glad I have nothing to do with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is, let's say we get Jeff Starling,
Sure.
Attorney General, what are some of the things you want to take on while in office?
Yeah, so there are a number of issues, and we'll be talking about I'm sure some different things in a year or two from now than we are now. But the one issue, and I call them really my issues 1A and 1B because you hear about them intertwined quite a bit, and they are intertwined. You hear them from rural communities to urban communities, and that's the intersection of fentanyl and illicit marijuana. And the reason I say those are related is because they're largely backed by foreign criminal enterprises, largely Chinese, some others, that underpin all those. They bring the precursor chemicals into the United States and into Oklahoma to make fentanyl. Recently I heard, think of a sweet and low pack, one of those pink packs that has about 1,000 milligrams in it, and if that was fentanyl, 2 of those milligrams could kill you. So
Right.
stuff is very, very potent. And then on the illegal marijuana side, we grow, this is based on a 2025 study, 32 times more marijuana in the state than we legally consume. We're responsible for something like half the illegal marijuana in the entire country. And that's here in Oklahoma. It's largely backed by these Chinese criminal enterprises. And so we need to get a handle on that. There are ways of doing that, especially partnering with our federal resources and using things like federal conspiracy statutes. They got tools with mail and wire fraud charges, and you're being able to rely on sources like the FBI to really pull out these criminal enterprises root and branch. And you think about the overhang that these enterprises have. It affects not only drug crimes that we have, but gun crimes, human trafficking, money laundering. All those criminal activities spur from this type of activity. So we got to get at that. That's sort of my first issue, if you will. And this is probably a lengthy answer.
No, go ahead. You have the floor.
All right, well, good. I like that. And then the second one is really having a pro-business agenda for the Office of Attorney General. It's something you don't hear about too often for the Attorney General, but the Attorney General really has a role that they can play in making Oklahoma a better state to do business. I see that now as Secretary of Energy and Environment. My office is very, very involved in the recruitment of businesses to the state of Oklahoma, and that makes a lot of sense. We're an energy-first state, always have been and always will. So my office is very involved in that. But from the Attorney General perspective, if you think one of the jobs of the Attorney General that you don't hear much about, but is a very, very important job, is they're essentially the general counsel for all the state agencies.
Right.
And so having thinking through regulatory reform, for example, and how AI can help streamline regulations and make permitting processes more transparent. The Office of Attorney General may not be the subject matter expert in the Department of Ag or the Water Resources Board or whatever it may be, but they can be experts in the process of how to do that and take that general counsel hat, put that on, and push that experience out to the various agencies to help them become more pro-business and business friendly. And then the last thing really is, I'm not. You mentioned this before. I'm not a career politician. I've never run for office before. This is all new to me, but it's also freeing, right? I'm not beholden to folks, and I really want to get politics out of the office of the Attorney General. Just over time, that office has become more and more political. Not just here in Oklahoma, but really around the country. And it really needs to get back, in my view, to calling balls and strikes. And getting personal political agendas out of that office. And I tell people that you may disagree with me on what the law says, and that's fine. We can have that argument, but you won't have the impression or belief that any decision I made was based on some personal short-term political agenda.
I think one of the axioms we live by here in Oklahoma is that let's not increase taxes, let's increase taxpayers. So that business-friendly mindset is what gets plugged in there, trying to draw more people to Oklahoma.
Absolutely.
And we've got those opportunities.
Well, we're a top 10 state now in net migration, with more people moving to the state of Oklahoma than moving away, and we're top 10 in the country. That's because we got a good thing going here in Oklahoma. We're really a business-friendly state, low taxes, low regulations. We have a workforce that is strong. There's room for improvement in some of these areas, and we need to keep leaning forward because other states are improving too, right?
Right.
And so we need to keep making ourselves better.
Now, Jeff Starling, he is a Republican candidate for Attorney General, and one of my areas of expertise is domestic violence. So
Sure.
I kind of keep an eye on that, especially because that's going to involve a lot of initiatives out of the Attorney General's office.
Yep.
So we know here in Oklahoma we have an issue. We have a problem. We're one of the most deadly states for women out there.
Yeah, we just talked about a top 10 issue.
Right,
We're a
right.
bottom 10 in domestic violence.
Right. So how do you think you could use the Attorney General's office to help us curb our problem with domestic violence and abuse?
Yeah, I mean, as a father of two daughters, I mentioned that earlier. This one really hits home. I mean, you look at the victims of domestic violence, about 85% of them are women, right? So this is something that as a father is really important to me. Domestic violence, we do have a problem. We're bottom 10. Those crimes tend to escalate over time, right? So you'll have a low-level domestic violence issue, and then it builds over time. And right now we have domestic violence resulting in homicides, for example, continue to increase in Oklahoma. Well, that builds typically over time. So we need to do a couple of things in my mind. One is we need to, for those folks who've committed domestic violence with aggravating factors, right, using a deadly weapon or serious bodily injury, that sort of thing, there needs to be serious consequences on that as a deterrent. But if these crimes do escalate over time, when they're low level and they start off, we need to make sure we're intervening. A lot of times these don't get reported, right?
Right.
And so the ability to intervene is not there because it's not reported. So we need to make it comfortable for primarily women, but whoever's the victim of a domestic violence incident, to know that we're there to help. We have nonprofit and faith-based initiatives that are also there that can help step in and make it not a stigma to report a problem. We hear it on the criminal justice side quite a bit with terrorism. If you see something, say something. We need to have that kind of mentality around the early reporting of domestic violence so we can intervene.
I'm going to have to stop you there. Please come back and visit. We didn't have enough time to go
I
through
get
everything. Be safe in your travels all around the state as you campaign. And like I said, you're more than welcome to always come back here to Freedom's First News and visit.
Well, thank you, Jason. I really appreciate the time.
That's Jeff Starling, Republican candidate for AG. I'm Jason Doyle, your host for Freedom's First News. Brian Kilmeade's coming up next on Oklahoma's Talk Radio, Freedom 96.9.